Chapter 3250. Yi Qing Luo's cold eyes swept past as she stared at Yan Xiaoyi. Yan Xiaoyi giggled as she shrank into Qiao Jin's embrace. TSK, our boss has flown into a rage out of humiliation. This means, we guessed correctly. Qiao Jin held the young girl in his arms tightly and said warmly, "All right, stop messing around." Yan Xiaoyi pouted her lips but didn't continue teasing Yi Qing Luo. However, the mocking smile on his face did not fade away for a long time. Because Yi Qing Luo had indeed stirred up trouble with Dmo Xian last night, she felt guilty and didn't continue this topic with Yan Xiaoyi. Today's departure was also a farewell. Devil-class brothers, as well as Dmo Xian, arranged for 30 Imperial Palace elite disciples to protect them in secret, as they returned to the West Continent first, to escort Immerse back, and at the same time inform the West Continent about the matters regarding the South Continent and East Continent. As for Yi Qing Luo and the rest, they followed the East Wave Monarch towards the East Wave Continent. After saying their goodbyes, the two groups of people headed in opposite directions and embarked on their journey. Gu Ming personally sent them off until both parties disappeared from his sight. Only then did he and the great general head towards the palace. He had just returned to the entrance of the palace. A guard dressed in the uniform of the Wind Valley sect hurried over. "Sect leader Lord. Something has happened, something has happened." Gu Ming stopped and frowned at the guard. "What's wrong?" "Lord sect leader." The guard's face was filled with terror as he hesitated and stammered, young sect leader, he's gone." The South Wave Continent and the East Wave Continent weren't that far apart. Moreover, there was a small path that led straight to it. It could be seen that the relationship between the East and South continents was much closer than the other continents. Within a day, Yi Qing Luo's group had already moved into the East Continent's Imperial Palace. Before East Wave Monarch personally went to South Wave Continent to plead with Yi Qing Luo, he had already given the order in the palace. The palace maids were extremely respectful towards Yi Qing Luo's group. After a day of rest, Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian planned to head towards the place which East Wave Monarch mentioned earlier, that suddenly appeared and released a strange mysterious energy from the desolate mountain. In other words, the East Wave's sovereign's guess was that the forces of Netherworld Palace had secretly invaded this place. That place was likely to be the secret base that Dark Nether Palace was preparing to set up in the East Continent. Yi Qing Luo recalled the corpses she saw in the base in South Tide Continent, and the struggling souls in the refining vessels. Her eyes were filled with a layer of coldness. If he could stop it in time, if they were the first to destroy Abyss Palace's base in the East Wave Continent, he could only destroy it. The gloomy palace used corpses and human souls to refine undead puppets. But there were always accidents in everything. After all, Yi Qing Luo and the others were esteemed guests who were personally welcomed into the East Tide Continent by the East Tide Monarch. In addition, after East Water Continent's Jade Sky Sect sovereign heard that Yi Qing Luo and the others had arrived at East Water Continent, he slandered them in various ways. This caused numerous powerhouses and commoners in East Continent to be extremely curious towards Yi Qing Luo and the rest. They also wanted to know, after all, the royal family's respect towards Yi Qing Luo and the rest was real. Or was it Jade Dome sect masters' hatred and vilification towards Yi Qing Luo and the others real? Because of this, Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian wanted to settle their business properly. Behind them, there was a large group of people. Those who heard the news and came to join in the fun. Most of the powerhouses were people. Chapter 3251. Hence, Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian were followed by a large group of people. Adding them up, there were at least 50 to 60 people. These people from various powerhouses in East Continent, although they were following behind them, but they didn't go up to disturb them. After all, they were people whom East Continent Monarch had personally welcomed back. Although the various powerhouses didn't understand East Continent Monarch's actions, but they had more or less heard of this rumor. South Continent's matters, almost everyone in the entire Nirvana realm knew about it. And the people whom East Continent Monarch had invited back. It was rumored that they were the benefactors who helped South Continent defend South Continent. Could it be? East Continent monarch felt that their East Continent would become the next South Continent. So as a precaution, he specially invited these people over. But when the various powerhouses saw Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian, their faces revealed a suspicious expression. This time they were going to investigate that barren mountain. Yi Qing Luo originally didn't intend to go over with a large group of people to alert the enemy. Hence only Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian headed over. In the eyes of the various powerhouses, the young lady was dressed in a cherry red long dress, a stunning beauty. Beautiful, indeed beautiful. Like a fairy from the 9 heavens who had descended to earth. As compared to Princess Lan Ling Nua, who was once famous in the East Continent, she was even more beautiful. No. There was no comparison at all. But, this beauty. Could it kill secluded palace? Could it save the East Continent? This young lady looked too young. How could she possibly be an expert who helped South Continent defend the continent? Then, the purple-robed man beside the young lady was tall and his every movement was noble and elegant. Even though he was wearing a half mask, concealing half of his looks. From this, one could tell just how peerless his appearance was under the mask. But, this handsome. Could he kill secluded palace? Could he save the East Continent? The various powerhouses' hearts were filled with doubts. Logically, based on South Continent's situation, plus Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian's reputation, no matter what, East Continent's people should know their identities. But precisely because South Continent's situation was so severe that it was almost exterminated. Moreover, their opponent was the newly risen Palace of Gloomy Darkness, whose momentum was heading straight for the Imperial Palace. Moreover, the secluded Darkness Palace had a secret weapon that was impervious to swords, spears, water, and fire. Even if the other continents heard about this, they did not dare to interfere. He was afraid that he would get into trouble. Because of this, no matter how close the East Wave's sovereign was to the Wind Valley sect master of the South Wave continent. Before discovering the abnormality of the barren mountain, the East Wave monarch had no choice but to send out his own secret guards to assist Qin Lai in secret. He could only choose to protect himself. After all, in addition to being a good friend of Gu Ming, more importantly, he was the monarch of the East Wave continent. So, until now, these people only knew of the tragic state of the South Wave continent and some news from the East Wave's sovereign himself. However, he did not know much about the specifics of the situation and the reason why the South Wave continent was able to survive in the end. Just when everyone was full of doubts, a deep voice came from the crowd. "Are you the benefactors that Lord Monarch asked to come back?" This person asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Many pairs of eyes turned towards the source of the voice. A tall and sturdy man in his 30s strode over. Chapter 3252. Yi Qing Luo also stopped in her tracks as she shifted her gaze towards that man. From the attitude of the group of people from various powerhouses who had been following behind her, this 30-year-old man's status in Jade Dome City shouldn't be low. But from this person's imposing manner, one could judge that this person was coming with ill intentions. The man beside her leaned forward slightly. Using his shoulder, he blocked in front of the young lady. This subconscious action made Yi Qing Luo's lips blossomed into a smile. Knowing that this person's ability wasn't her match, but he still made a move to protect her. This meant that this man, no matter if it was his subconscious or his muscles' instincts, they were all thinking of protecting her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as she hugged Dmo Xian's arm with both hands. And Yi Qing Luo's brilliant smile, and that action of hugging Dmo Xian's arm. In the eyes of this person, who was around 30 years old, that meant that she totally didn't put him in her eyes. That was intentional provocation. The man's originally solemn and dignified expression instantly darkened, in broad daylight. As a lady, how dare you offend public decency? In Nirvana realm, although there wasn't that kind of old thinking, that a lady must obey the 3 virtues and must not step out of the house. But, towards a lady, it was still harsh. No matter how high a lady's profound grade was. She still had to marry after all. Ultimately, she still had to bring along her entire life's worth of ability, to contribute to her husband's family. Like hugging and kissing a man on the streets, this kind of action. Generally speaking, a lady absolutely could not do it. But to Yiqing Luo, this was merely an ordinary matter. Hearing the man's malicious tone of questioning, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. A pair of long and narrow eyes, curved upwards, extremely bewitching. In her eyes, it was as if poppy flowers were blooming. So beautiful that it could captivate one's soul, making one suffocate. Even the man who came looking for trouble couldn't help but be mesmerized by this smile. This. Old uncle, may I know who are you to me? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she spoke word by word. Although there was a hint of laughter in her voice. However, his tone was so cold that it could cut through the bones. The blinded man immediately shivered. His back felt cold from those cold words. My husband and I can do whatever we want. What does that have to do with you? What rights do you have to judge me? Yiqing Luo was still smiling as her charming eyes curved slightly, gazing at the man. In the air, there was a formless pressure. The man's face was no longer ashen, but instead, it turned pale. It was as if he was unwilling to admit that he would be frightened by the aura of a little girl. His bell-like eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo, his eyes filled with warning murderous intent. This general is East Continent's country protector General Chao Qian. Protector of the state? General? This person was actually a general? In Yiqing Luo's mind, the great general whom she had met in the southern continent surfaced. They were both tall and sturdy men in armor. But, why was his temperament completely different? The great general was full of righteousness. On the other hand, the person in front of him was fiendish and vicious. Clearly, his hands were stained with blood. Towards this country protector general, Yiqing Luo didn't have any good impression at all. Country protector general? Yiqing Luo scoffed as her charming eyes swept past Chao Qian. So what about that? That light sweep. As compared to ridicule, it was more like humiliation. Chapter 3253. Young lass, didn't your family teach you that when you're outside? A dragon should coil up and a tiger should lie down? Chao Qian's eyes were filled with rage as he released his own aura. He attempted to use his aura to suppress Yiqing Luo. Facing Chao Qian's oppressive might, Yiqing Luo responded with a smile as the smile on her face remained unchanged. My family indeed didn't teach me this logic. Chao Qian's expression changed slightly as his pupils contracted as he stared at Yiqing Luo, who was totally unaffected as his brows creased tightly. If your family didn't teach you this, then this general shall teach you. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. There's no need to trouble general. Although my family didn't teach me this logic, but they taught me that if there's a silly beep asking for a slap, as a kind and adorable young lass, I have to satisfy the silly beep's wish. Yiqing Luo's words were simple and vulgar. Even though Yiqing Luo hadn't made a move to slap him, Chao Qian felt that his face was burning in pain. In front of a young lass. He was the dignified country protecting general of East Tide Continent, but he wasn't able to gain any advantage at all. He was even ridiculed by a young lass, as though he was a retarded beep. In front of the various powerhouses, in front of the surrounding commoners, he had lost all his face. In Chao Qian's mind, he recalled what his son said. The idea that Yiqing Luo was a demoness became even more resolute. Country protecting general. Suddenly, a young lady's clear voice interrupted the tumbling in Chao Qian's heart. Chao Qian raised his head in alarm as he stared at Yiqing Luo. The young lady smiled lightly as her voice was clear and melodious. Since country protecting general is very clear that we are the benefactors who saved your East Tide Continent, personally invited back by the East Tide monarch. But it's just the first time you've met us and you're reprimanding, humiliating and pressuring us. Don't tell me, Country Protecting General is questioning the East Tide Monarch's decision? The young lady's voice paused for a moment. But she didn't give Chao Qian a chance to speak as she continued laughing, or should I say, East Tide Monarch's decision, Country Protecting General totally disregards it? The meaning behind her words. It was obvious that he was asking the Protector General, are you looking down on the East Wave Sovereign? Chao Qian's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly retorted, You, what nonsense are you spouting? My loyalty to the Lord Monarch can be proven by the sun and the moon. At such a young age, you already know how to sow discord. You really have a good upbringing. While Chao Qian was rebutting, he also stepped on Yi Qingluo's foot. His voice was also extremely loud. He was afraid that the people around him would misunderstand that he was the protector of the state and did not respect the East Wave Sovereign. It was also indirectly telling everyone that Yi Qingluo, this demoness, was intentionally sowing discord. Yi Qingluo put on an innocent face and blinked her big bright eyes. I'm such a kind and cute little girl, I don't even know the principle of going out, how would I know how to sow discord? I'm just telling you how I feel. Saying that, Yi Qingluo blinked her eyes innocently and suddenly realized something as she pointed at Chao Qian. I know, you're called guilty conscience. Perhaps it was because Yi Qingluo's acting skills were simply too explosive. After Yi Qingluo's words ended, the gazes of the surrounding powerhouses towards Chao Qian were all different. Even the surrounding commoners started to stare at Chao Qian as they started whispering amongst themselves. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees things more clearly. Chapter 3254. Looking at the Imperial Protector General again, his head was filled with sweat and his face was agitated. That was obviously a guilty conscience. TSK, this Imperial Protector General indeed didn't have any respect towards the East Wave Monarch. The commoners were silently cursing. So, no matter which era, any place, it was a society that looked at one's looks. When Chao Qian heard Yi Qingluo using the words he had said previously to counter him, he was so infuriated that he almost threw up blood. He was originally a boorish man and adhered to the principle of not babbling if he could make a move. Now that he was choked by Yi Qingluo's few words, he couldn't even retort a single word. He was so infuriated that the muscles on his entire body tensed up as he clenched his fist tightly, wanting to hammer down on that young lady's peerless face. But, he was very clear. If this fist of his really landed on her. He had indeed confirmed the two words, guilty conscience, which Yi Qingluo mentioned. Because of his guilty conscience, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and beat someone up. And the person he beat up was an esteemed guest that the monarch had personally invited back. Even if he was the Imperial Protector General, he probably wouldn't be able to escape punishment. Chao Qian suppressed his anger as his brows creased inwards as he stated his intention in a cold voice. Young lass, you have a sharp tongue. I wonder if your ability is as powerful as your ability. He opened his hand and a huge axe appeared in his hand. That huge axe was almost taller than Chao Qian's entire head. One must know that Chao Qian had a strong physique and from a visual estimation, he was at least 2 meters tall or so. It was imaginable just how tall and heavy that huge axe was. That huge axe, in Chao Qian's muscular hands, agilely brandished it a few times. Following that, Chao Qian suddenly pointed the axe head towards Yi Qingluo. Young lass, since you're personally invited by the monarch to protect the East Wave Continent, to prevent the South Wave Continent's tragedy from happening, the benefactor in the East Wave Continent. Then let this general, the Imperial Protector General, personally test if you have the ability to protect the East Wave Continent. So that the East Wave Continent's commoners will believe in you. Facing that flickering sharp axe head, Yi Qingluo's eyelids didn't even blink. Even though the axe was only 3 steps away from her and would have landed on her body and split her in half, Lin Mingya did not dare to move. Yi Qingluo's expression didn't change as her long and narrow eyes looked at him smilingly. Then, the young girl slowly opened her mouth and said in a clear voice, the East Wave's sovereign personally invited us over, but the Protector General still can't accept the East Wave's sovereign's choice. TSK. So the East Wave's sovereign status in the East Wave continent is lower than that of a protector general. Damned girl. How dare you try to sow discord? Chao Qian scolded angrily, his eyes wide open. I was worried that Lord Monarch would be deceived by a silly little girl like you, so I came here to test your strength on behalf of Lord Monarch. The protector of the country was overbearing. The girl's expression was light and indifferent. It formed a sharp contrast. None of the people from the major forces or the commoners spoke up to break the silence. They were not fools. Speak up and help the protector of the state? Wouldn't that confirm what the little girl said, that she was questioning their respected Lord Monarch? Open his mouth and help that little girl? Wouldn't that be offending the protector general? Besides, they were also very curious about the young lady's strength. Hence, everyone maintained their silence in tacit understanding. But in his heart, there was an urgent hope. Fight! 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 Chapter 32:55. Why? You don't dare? Chao Qian placed the huge axe heavily by his side. The huge axe crashed onto the ground with a loud dong sound. The crowd only felt that. Their feet seemed to have trembled thrice. The commoners were so shocked that they cried out in shock as they started to retreat. Chao Qian was apparently very satisfied with the commoners' reaction. He straightened his back as that valiant and dignified facial features displayed a solemn expression. Little lass, don't think that I am bullying you just because I am older than you. I am doing this for the sake of East Tide Continent's future. But don't worry, I am not someone who doesn't know the severity of things. I just want to see your ability, to see what standard it is. I will show mercy. When he said the last part of his sentence, Chao Qian used that kind of high and mighty, disdainful attitude when he opened his mouth. Finishing his words, Chao Qian held his head high and puffed out his chest, waiting for the young lady to apologize or beg for mercy. But, he waited and waited. Chao Qian only waited for a pft, filled with sarcastic laughter. That laughter was obviously very pleasant to hear. But in Chao Qian's ears, that was like a sharp knife, fiercely piercing his face. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a cold smile as she crossed her arms, staring at Chao Qian. Her waist suddenly tightened. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she looked sideways at the man beside her. She heard Dmo Xian's deep and hoarse voice, drifting into her ears, noisy, I'll go settle it. Dmo Xian said as his sleeves moved slightly towards a brainless cannon fodder like Chao Qian. Dmo Xian only needed to wave his sleeves slightly and he would be able to dismember Chao Qian into 1,000 pieces, leaving nothing behind. Ah Xian. A hand covered Dmo Xian's arm, suppressing his overflowing profound energy. Since we are here to help East Tide Monarch, if this matter blows up, it will be very troublesome. Fighting with the country's general. No matter what the consequences were, they would eventually be estranged by the East Tide Continent's commoners or other powerhouses. This would also give the secluded palace an opportunity. Unless there was a need. Yiqing Luo really didn't want to waste time and energy to tangle with this brainless general. Let's go. Yiqing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they walked past Chao Qian. The axe-wielding Chao Qian was left to the side. Chao Qian stood rooted to the spot, stunned for a long while before he abruptly reacted. Little girl, are you afraid? Feeling guilty? Chao Qian stared at Yiqing Luo's back as his eyes flashed past a glint of, as expected. The embarrassment of being ignored was replaced by delight. Chao Qian hefted his giant axe and strode forward. Little girl, if you're afraid, apologize to me, then follow me to Lord Monarch and tell him you lied to him. This general will be merciful and let you go. Otherwise. As he spoke, a proud smile appeared on his face. At the moment when Yiqing Luo didn't dare to fight with him, Chao Qian felt extremely carefree. His son was right. This little girl was a little demon who used her beauty to serve others. At this moment, the powerful lover was not here. She didn't even have the courage to exchange one move with him. Ridiculous. Just based on this little demon, was she worthy to be called as East Tide Continent's benefactor? Chao Qian's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. He laughed coldly as his loud and clear voice resounded in the skies above Jade Dome City. Otherwise, none of you can dream of leaving Jade Dome City. Chapter 3256. Close the city gates? Were they intending to seal off Jade Dome City, to stop them from leaving? When Yiqing Luo heard that, she squinted her eyes as a chilly intent faintly appeared in her long and narrow eyes. Chao Qian saw Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian stopping in their tracks. He thought that they were afraid. He laughed delightfully. Two little dolls, now, have you learnt what this general taught you? The logic of being outside? He swaggered forward. The surrounding powerhouses and commoners were extremely disdainful towards Chao Qian's actions. After all, these were merely two young lads and young lady. As the protector of the kingdom, Chao Qian was indeed too overbearing. But, although these two little dolls didn't look like they were afraid of the country protecting general, but they refused to bother about the country protecting general. This made everyone's hearts start to have suspicions. If these two kids were really swindlers who swindled and deceived people, then, wouldn't they be lying to their monarch? If this matter were to be spread out, their East Tide continent would become a joke. Everyone's gaze towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian was filled with a strange expression. Some even started to whisper to each other. Originally the commoners and various powerhouses who didn't want to interfere in this matter. Instinctively, they started to surround Yiqing Luo. Although they didn't make a move. But they used their own bodies to block Yiqing Luo's path of leaving. Apparently, they were forcing Yiqing Luo to give an explanation. Yiqing Luo had not expected that she had just arrived in East Tide Continent and she had already caused such a huge ruckus. It directly broke the original plan that she and Dmo Xian had set. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those commoners calmly as the expression on her face still didn't have any changes. Her emotions were also calm without any fluctuations. Moments later, her gaze fell onto Chao Qian. After Chao Qian saw the surrounding commoners had started to take action. The pride of being the country protecting general and finally being able to retaliate. Earlier from Yiqing Luo's words, he had suffered humiliation which made his face filled with a vicious cold smile. Before he could open his mouth, Yiqing Luo used that pair of calm eyes to look at him as she spoke out. The reason which the State Protector General taught me, pardon my ignorance, but I still haven't learned it. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. As Chao Qian's expression darkened, she continued, however, someone as intelligent as the protector of the state will definitely learn my reasoning. As soon as he finished speaking. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap was extremely loud. Everyone was stunned. Chao Qian was also stunned. But, the girl who had slapped him gracefully retracted her hand. The masked man on the side took out an embroidered handkerchief, held the girl's hand, and wiped it off bit by bit. The young girl's face was as calm as still water, without the slightest ripple. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes were tinged with charm. It would be a waste not to take the head that was delivered to me. It would be a waste not to hit his face. Clear and melodious words spat out from the girl's pink lips one by one. After she finished this sentence, the young girl turned her head and exchanged glances with the man next to her. That aloof and noble aura, at this instance, was like the blooming of flowers in spring. No need to wipe, later on, it will get dirty. Dmo Xian pinched her fair little hand. Don't think it's dirty? Punish the chicken to warn the monkey. Yiqing Luo spat out these 4 words, as her peripheral vision swept past the surrounding commoners. She didn't want to stir up trouble. She also didn't want to create estrangement with the East Continent's commoners at this juncture. But... Chapter 3257. The surrounding people from various large powerhouses in East Tide Continent had basically all arrived. And numerous Jade Dome sex commoners were also present. Since the people of the East Water Continent all had doubts about her strength, it was only natural. Then, She would use Chao Qian as a warning to others, so that these people would dispel their suspicions. As for the consequences, that would depend on how the East Tide monarch would handle it. Yi Qing Luo, who had decided to kill the chicken as a warning to others, didn't intentionally suppress her anger. She shifted her gaze towards Chao Qian. Her eyes were filled with frost. I wonder if the intelligent country protecting general has learnt the logic that I've taught you? You. That slap was not only on Chao Qian's face, it was also a slap on his dignity. In front of so many people. He was the country protecting general and he was slapped by a young lass who was still wet behind her ears. If this matter were to be spread out, it would definitely become a joke after a meal. Chao Qian's eyes suddenly turned scarlet red as he raised his huge axe and chopped it down towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Profound qi burst forth, stirring the surrounding air. A gust of strong wind also lifted the young lady's black hair on her shoulders. If it was previously, Chao Qian was here for his son. Then now. Chao Qian was really infuriated by Yi Qing Luo and wanted to kill her. Bam! The huge axe fell. Vast profound energy surged and rolled. Monstrous waves of qi spread out in all directions. The people from the major forces were all forced to take a few steps back by this powerful aura. As for the other commoners, those with weaker bodies clutched their chests as they spat out blood. After the various powerhouses avoided that powerful aura, they immediately looked towards the direction of the billowing air waves. The masked, noble, elegant, and unapproachable man stood outside the safe zone. That man had obviously been standing beside the young lady earlier. And now, he actually escaped to the safe zone by himself? What a pity for that devastatingly beautiful young lady. She must have been split into two halves by the country protecting general. Everyone sighed regretfully. Just at this moment, they suddenly heard someone exclaiming, "That young lady. That young lady is actually fine. She received general's axe barehandedly." What? Everyone was startled by this person's scream. Everyone craned their necks to take a closer look. Qi waves rolled and surged violently. The strong wind around them danced wildly, gradually blowing away the surging airwaves. It revealed two people standing in the middle of the street. Chao Qian gripped the giant axe with both hands and maintained a posture of cleaving downwards. As for the girl, he merely lifted his right hand. Under the sunlight, his right hand seemed to be plated with a layer of golden brilliance. She spread her fingers and faced the sharp axe. All he had to do was move the axe forward a little. That sharp axe could definitely chop off the girl's right hand. But, however, the axe did not chop down for a long time, no. It wasn't that Chao Qian hadn't slashed down. Instead, some of the faction leaders clearly saw it. A wisp of profound light flashed in the young girl's palm. It was that profound light that had blocked Chao Qian's giant axe. This understanding. This caused the cultivators from the various powers to widen their eyes. He used only one hand to block the weapon of the general of the protector of the state. This, in the entire East Wave continent, there were probably not many people who could do this. This young girl actually possessed such powerful strength? It wasn't just the surrounding people who were shocked. Chapter 3258. Chao Qian was very clear on how much strength he had used in this axe strike. At least 80% of his strength had been used. But this young lady in front of him, who looked like she was only 14 or 15 years old, had used her bare hands to block his attack. Bare hands. Bare hands. Even Jade Sky Sect Master was not able to block 80% of his attack with bare hands. Chao Qian's heart thumped hard. Could it be that, right from the start, he was wrong? This person who was personally invited by the monarch, her ability was really very strong? No. Not right. This was totally different from what his son had said. Hadn't his son said that this young lass didn't have any ability and only knew how to use her beauty to seduce men, making men stand up for her? Chao Qian's heart was in a mess. Has the State Protector General's attack ended? The young lady's clear and sweet voice broke Chao Qian's shock and deep thoughts. Chao Qian suddenly raised his head as he met the young lady's face in a fluster. When he raised his head, he met Yi Qing Luo's pair of eyes which contained a gloomy coldness and a faint smile. He felt an icy cold electric current coursing through his 4 limbs. Then, next, it's my turn. The young lady's lips curled up brilliantly as her smile was like a blooming flower, peerlessly beautiful. That clear and sweet voice was filled with a joyful smile. Words that could be said. But it made the surrounding people's hearts inexplicably suffused with a chill. Chao Qian's heart had a ominous premonition. His heart was like a drum as it rumbled endlessly. Heh. The young lady laughed softly. At the same time, Chao Qian felt an intense numbing pain coming from his arms which were holding the huge axe tightly. At the next instant, his hands lost the strength to hold the huge axe. Dong! The huge axe crashed heavily onto the ground. The ground split open. The commoners cried out in shock as they dispersed in all directions. Chao Qian's eyes widened in shock as he stared at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment. As though he couldn't believe it. This young girl was able to render him completely defenseless and powerless to resist in such a short period of time. The young lady's smile slowly grew wider. It set off that gorgeous face which looked like a poppy flower, slowly blooming. She exuded a suffocating charm. Immediately after, a gust of wind slowly lingered around the young girl's body. Shortly after, it violently surged. As the wind blew, the gravel on the ground, the small items from the surrounding stalls, the trees, the houses, all of them made crackling sounds as they collided with each other. The sound was like a deadly symphony from hell. Chao Qian's heart surged with unprecedented fear. His heart felt like it was going to jump out of his throat. The corners of Yi Qing Luo's lips maintained a faint arc that seemed like a smile yet not a smile. A pair of calm and emotionless eyes stared fixedly at Chao Qian's increasingly terrified face. A dark red glow condensed on her slender and fair fingers. That dark red glow gradually enlarged on her fingertips. No, you can't. If you dare to kill me, His Excellency Monarch will not let you go, he won't. Chao Qian was so frightened that he could not speak coherently, his voice trembling. Yi Qing Luo shifted her vision from the red glow on her fingertips to Chao Qian. She grinned and chuckled, I won't kill you, don't be afraid. Her clear and sweet voice rang out in a leisurely manner. The young lady slowly raised her hand and waved it downwards towards Chao Qian. Chapter 32:59. A high-pitched and urgent voice came from afar. The commoners cried out in shock as they fled towards the 2 sides of the street. They saw a huge wolf-shaped magical beast rushing over at high speed. After the magical beast charged over, a bright yellow figure jumped down from the magical beast's back and walked towards Yi Qing Luo. East Wave Monarch, why are you here? Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned when she saw the person who stopped her. Wasn't the person in front of her the East Wave Royal Palace, East Wave Monarch? Imperial Madam, please calm down. Calm down. East Wave Monarch was sweating profusely as he panted heavily while cupping his fists towards Yi Qing Luo to plead for leniency. Country Protector General's action is indeed a little too extreme. I will definitely punish Country Protector General for this matter. After East Wave Monarch finished his long string of words, he gasped for air. Apparently, he had rushed over to stop Chao Qian and Yi Qing Luo after he found out about the matter. East Wave Monarch's appearance made the surrounding people enter a state of shock. After they regained their senses, various powerhouses all knelt down on one knee. Sir Monarch. When the commoners heard this loud and clear voice, they were so shocked that they all knelt down on the ground with a plop. In Nirvana realm, although the sects were the most respected and the royal family second, but in most people's eyes, the royal family was an existence which made people fearful. Like East Wave Monarch's holy face, ordinary powerhouses cultivators could hardly be seen a few times a year. Not to mention the ordinary commoners. The surrounding crowd all looked at East Wave Monarch in a daze. Taking another look, East Wave Monarch's attitude towards Yiqing Luo was extremely respectful. Recalling the scene where Yiqing Luo blocked Chao Qian's attack barehandedly and counterattacked, Chao Qian had no way to resist at all. The surrounding crowd's gaze towards Yiqing Luo had turned into reverence. This change was extremely obvious. Chao Qian, who had just escaped a calamity, was held up by his own soldiers as he panted heavily by the side. He deeply felt that the gazes which the crowd shot towards him seemed to be ridiculing him. Hearing East Wave Monarch's submissive tone, Chao Qian's eyes were almost spitting fire. How would Yiqing Luo not sense Chao Qian's attitude? But looking at East Wave Monarch's sincere and apologetic face, Yiqing Luo finally knew that she deserved to die as she slowly retracted her 5 fingers and retracted her aura. The East Wave's sovereign heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Emperor Madam. I did not handle this matter well. I apologize on behalf of the East Wave continent." Saying that, he bowed towards Yiqing Luo. He stood up and looked in the direction of the crowd. "I know that I invited 2 helpers from other continents on my own initiative. It is understandable that you would question their strength." The East Wave's sovereign spoke slowly, displaying the might of a sovereign. "Therefore, in front of everyone, I swear in the name of the ruler of the East Water continent that I am willing to vouch for Madame D and young Master D. They are definitely the saviors of the East Water continent." As soon as he finished speaking, the East Wave's sovereign's imposing gaze swept across everyone present. Then, he emphasized each word with dignity. "If that's the case, I hope that everyone will give me face and believe in my choice." The various powerhouses' cultivators looked at each other in dismay. The commoners were already trembling under the pressure released by the East Wave sovereign. Their lord sovereign had already used his lord's name to swear. Even if they still had some suspicions towards these 2 young men and young lady, so naturally they would not disrespect the lord sovereign. Chapter 3260. Moreover, everyone had witnessed with their own eyes the scene of Yiqing Luo blocking Chao Qian's attack barehandedly. The commoners all bowed their heads as they replied respectfully, "We believe in Monarch." Before they could finish their words, suddenly, a sharp and ruthless roar was heard. "Don't be fooled by them. This demoness isn't here to save the East Wave continent, she's here to destroy it." That coarse roar was heard hurriedly from afar. This sudden change made the surrounding commoners look towards the direction of the voice. The appearance of this voice, as compared to the appearance of the East Wave Monarch, it was even more attractive. The meaning conveyed by these words caused everyone to be alarmed. Destroy the East Wave continent? What does that mean? Not here to help the East Wave continent? How is that possible? This is the benefactor whom Sir Monarch had personally invited back. That's right, Sir Monarch has already appeared personally to vouch for them, so who is the one who is spouting nonsense here? The commoners were discussing fervently as their gazes swiftly searched for the direction where the voice came from. Bam! Only the sound of stumbling and knocking could be heard. A fat figure pushed through the crowd of commoners in front of him and squeezed his way forward. A few commoners were knocked onto the ground by this force as they cried out in pain. That fat figure's slits-like eyes stared fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's direction, totally ignoring the commoners whom he had knocked down as he walked towards Yiqing Luo and East Wave Monarch. When he saw the person approaching, East Wave Monarch's expression sunk slightly. His gaze swiftly swept past Yiqing Luo's face. Seeing Yiqing Luo's calm and indifferent expression, as though she didn't care about the person approaching, he silently heaved a sigh of relief. In actual fact, Yiqing Luo indeed didn't care. She squinted her long and narrow eyes as she looked at the person with a smile which didn't look like a smile before she slowly shifted her gaze away. This person's appearance was totally within Yiqing Luo's expectations. Chao Qian as a country protector general, it was impossible for him to find trouble with her in public for no reason. After all, he needed his face. But unfortunately, Chao Qian was so brainless as to let her slap his face. It could be said that there was no one behind this. She absolutely didn't believe it. It was none other than the sect master of the Jade Dome sect, Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren and Yi Qing Luo and the others had formed a huge enmity, so there was absolutely no chance for them to work together. Today, Yi Qing Luo and her entourage were personally invited by the East Wave monarch to the East Wave continent. That was stepping on his territory and slapping his face. How could Hao Nanren tolerate it? He couldn't wait to rush out. The Nirvana realm was dominated by the sects and supported by the royal family. When Hao Nanren's figure appeared in front of the crowd, everyone bowed respectfully in Hao Nanren's direction. Although his attitude could not be said to be as enthusiastic as when he was facing the East Wave's sovereign, he was still very respectful. Hao Nanren waved his hand and stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo, gritting his teeth as he pointed at her with righteous indignation, bellowing, "Everyone, don't be cheated by this demoness." She was a demoness who could bewitch people's hearts. Her goal in coming to the East continent is to destroy it. Hearing Hao Nanren mention the words, "destroy the East continent," once again, the crowd couldn't help but frown, looking at Hao Nanren's hysterical look. Chapter 3261. Hao Nanren sneered. The fat on his face trembled as he pointed his finger at the East Wave's sovereign. "Your respected ruler has long been bewitched by the demoness and lost his heart and soul. Everything I'm doing now is just being controlled by this demoness." Hao Nanren's words stunned the onlookers. Their lord monarch had been bewitched by the demoness? No, that's impossible. Their lord monarch was clearly sane. The East Wave's sovereign's face turned red with anger when he heard Hao Nanren's words. Following that, she quickly shot a glance towards Dmo Xian's direction. What did he mean by being bewitched by the imperial madam? What do you mean by losing my soul? No matter how lustful he was, he did not have the guts to flirt with the sovereign's woman. What if Di Zun misunderstood him? The East Wave's sovereign hurriedly explained, "Sect master of the Jade Dome sect, what nonsense are you talking about? The only thing I have for you is gratitude." Following that, he cupped his hands in obeisance towards Dmo Xian's direction as his voice was steady and dignified. "Moreover, Imperial Madam already has a husband and I have great respect for young Master D and Imperial Madam, so I will absolutely not cross the line." With that said, the East Billow sovereign's face darkened as he hollered angrily, "Sect master of Jade Dome sect, what are your intentions for slandering me like this?" The East Wave sovereign's attitude was extremely righteous. The crowd's suspicions about the East Wave's sovereign were shattered by his words. Hao Nanren's eyes turned cold. He clenched the fat on his arms so tightly that he almost squeezed the flesh out of his arm. "Huh? East Wave's sovereign, do you dare to use your title as a sovereign to tell the people you care about that you didn't abandon your own niece for that demoness? Do you dare to say that you didn't lock your own niece out of the country for that demoness?" Hao Nanren's words caused the East Wave's sovereign's expression to change drastically. He looked at the citizens who were filled with confusion. He opened his mouth, but he couldn't spit out the words that were already at the tip of his tongue. Because he chased Lan Ling Nua out of the country. It was indeed to please Yi Qing Luo. As the monarch of the Eastern continent, he absolutely could not lie to his people. The East Wave's sovereign hesitated for a moment. This also increased the suspicions of the onlookers towards the East Wave's sovereign. The corners of Hao Nanren's mouth twitched in an extremely secretive manner, revealing a mocking smile. This smile quickly disappeared into the depths of his cold eyes. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was already suspicious of the East Billow continent, he struck while the iron was hot and continued, "The East Billow sovereign has no way of refuting this, right? Because your heart has already been completely bewitched by that demoness. Now, you're blindly following that demoness' lead. The way I see it, you invited this demoness back to the East continent this time because you plan to let this demoness take over the East continent's imperial family and gradually invade the East continent." Hao Nanren was very clear. How selfish could the human heart be? Once it involved his own interests, everyone would go crazy for it. So, when Hao Nanren mentioned that Yi Qing Luo's motive was to make the East Wave's royal family a figurehead, to invade the East Wave's continent, the onlookers turned pale with fright. He couldn't help but feel scared. What Hao Nanren said might be true. Whether it was the profound practitioners of the major forces or the common people, all of them had different thoughts when they heard Hao Nanren's words. The sounds of discussion rose and fell. There were also people pointing and gossiping. It would also let Chao Qian, the protector of the kingdom, understand that as a protector of the kingdom, he could easily be used as a tool. It was fine if it was her today. If it was someone else as the country protector general, his every move could affect the entire Jade Dome city and even the East continent. East Below Monarch detected Yi Qing Luo's gaze as he took a look at Chao Qian and then at Yi Qing Luo. Immediately, he understood what Yi Qing Luo was thinking about. He coughed lightly and said awkwardly, Actually, the general wasn't used by Hao Nanren. Because, he treated Nuo, as his daughter-in-law, Lan Ling Nuo. Daughter-in-law? Yi Qing Luo, as expected, a moron would only fall for a moron. Lan Ling Nuo, that brainless narcissist, attracted the brainless family of the state-protecting general. Chapter 3263. In other words, the reason why the protector of the state is targeting me is because of his retarded, no, because of his son? Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched as she looked at the East Lawn monarch. The East Wave's sovereign felt even more embarrassed. He tried his best to ignore the word idiot as he said, If my guess is correct, that should be the case. Yi Qing Luo, he was such a good father. Of course, I'm not saying that Hao Nanren has nothing to do with what you did today. The East Wave's sovereign coughed dryly. Hao Nanren is used to using people's hearts to achieve his own goals. The protector of the state was also blinded by his son's matter. If it is possible, I hope that the imperial madam will forgive the protector of the state. Yi Qing Luo indifferently shot a glance at Chao Qian as her tone was indifferent. Towards him, I have no interest. She had a max-level main account and a full set of godly equipment. For a newbie account like Chao Qian, she did not have much time to spare on him. The East Wave's sovereign heaved a sigh of relief. After all, the protector of the state was also a member of the royal family. If Yi Qing Luo wanted the kingdom protecting general's life, the East Wave imperial family would definitely be affected. Below him, there were still many forces eyeing the position of general covetously. At this critical juncture where the Palace of Darkness could attack at any time, the East Wave's sovereign really didn't want to complicate matters. The East Wave monarch did not wish to stay here any longer. He no longer wished to be the target of the crowd's criticism. He looked towards Dmo Xian's direction. Just as he was about to open his mouth and announce Dmo Xian's identity. East Wave monarch, when you forced me to go to the South Wave continent and personally handed over the Jade Dome sex heirloom, I knew that you had been bewitched by this demoness. Everything you've said has been instructed by this demoness. I don't believe it. Hao Nanren naturally noticed East Wave monarch's gaze on Dmo Xian. How could he not know what the East Wave's sovereign was planning? He immediately took the initiative to strike back at the East Wave's sovereign. With his words in front of her. Even if the East Wave monarch revealed Dmo Xian's identity, the onlookers also began to doubt the East Wave's sovereign's words. They would also think that there was a possibility that this was a lie which Yi Qing Luo had instigated. Of course, there were also profound practitioners who wanted to believe in the power of the East Wave's sovereign. However, this matter concerned the future survival of the East Water continent. No one dared to make their stance clear. The words that the East Wave's sovereign was about to say were forced back into his throat by Hao Nanren. He was so angry that he was about to stomp his feet. His face was ashen and ugly to the extreme. Ha ha ha. Speechless now, right? Monarch of the East Waves, does this mean that you agree? When Hao Nanren saw that the monarch of the East Waves was rendered speechless, he laughed loudly in a pleased manner. The humiliation that he had suffered from Yi Qing Luo and East Wave monarch, he wanted to repay them bit by bit. Although Hao Nanren's eyes were as small as a slit, the viciousness hidden in them were very strong. His eyes were filled with viciousness as he stared at Yi Qing Luo's direction, his lips curled into an evil sneer. However, the moment Hao Nanren's gaze landed on him, a voice suddenly rang out. The girl's clear and charming eyes met Hao Nanren's gaze leisurely. Their eyes happened to meet. The sinister smile on Hao Nanren's face was seen clearly. Then, Hao Nanren's chubby face turned ghastly pale as if the color had faded. His smile and expression froze on his face. On the other hand, the young lady who met his gaze had a teasing smile in her eyes as she looked at him who was obviously trying to avoid her gaze. Star. Chapter 3264. Jade Dome Sect Master. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth as her voice was clear and sweet. Just a single call and Hao Nanren's entire body seemed as though he was struck by lightning as he kept shivering. That fat pig-like body was shaking so much that a pot of oil could be flung out. You, what are you trying to do? This sect master is warning you, this is East Continent. If you dare to make a move, make a move. In South Continent, Hao Nanren had suffered quite a number of losses in Yiqing Luo's books. Adding on to the fact that he was very clear of this young lady's close relationship with the mysterious and respectable overlord. Especially, he took out a fake azure dragon pearl and was exposed by Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo used that kind of humiliating method to get someone to throw him out. He, East Continent's Jade Dome Sect Master, suffered the treatment of being thrown out of the city gates in South Continent. This matter had even spread to East Continent. He had always been a joke in East Continent. Towards Yiqing Luo, Hao Nanren had already formed a reflex fear mentality. If I make a move, what can you do? Yiqing Luo naturally saw the terror on Hao Nanren's face. Following Yiqing Luo's advance, he took a small step forward. Hao Nanren was so scared that he quivered as his entire body bounced on the spot. You dare. With a swoosh sound, his entire body's profound energy was unleashed at this instance. The surging profound energy turned into a hurricane as it whizzed around him, preventing others from getting close. No, to be more accurate, it was guarding against Yiqing Luo's approach. But just this degree of hurricane, could it stop her? Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. She raised her fair palm and in an extremely lazy manner, she pointed her palm towards Hao Nanren's direction. Profound energy, not congealed yet. Yiqing Luo's chest suddenly felt a scorching hot sensation surging. That was the direction of her profound jade heart. Why did her profound jade heart have a reaction again? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she lowered her eyes to look at her profound jade heart. Immediately following that, she sensed a riot coming from the pet space. Master, don't fight, Chi feels an unusual presence. Chi-Chi's crisp voice came from the pet space. Then, Chi-Ao Jiao's small, arrogant voice rang out, foolish human, if you hit me with that palm, you'll be the one to regret it. Yiqing Luo's raised palm slowly retracted as she clenched it tightly. What's going on? Qi Yan snorted and said, there is a familiar smell on the fat man named Hao Nanren. Yes, master. That unusual aura was very dense. If master can find that unusual aura through that lump of fat, it will definitely be helpful to master. Chi wagged his tail in agreement. An unusual aura? A familiar smell? On Hao Nanren. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as she stared at Hao Nanren and sized him up for a long time, but she didn't detect any different aura from Hao Nanren. Madam, what are you thinking about? East Below Monarch saw that Yiqing Luo had been using a strange gaze to stare at Hao Nanren, and his heart couldn't help but felt his hair standing on end. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at East Below Monarch. A glint suddenly flashed past her mind as a mischievous glint flashed past her eyes, and she pretended to be doubtful. I sensed a different aura from Hao Nanren's body. Could it be that this Jade Sky Sect sovereign has other unknown powers? East Below Monarch's pupils suddenly contracted. This change was extremely minute, but it penetrated deep into Yiqing Luo's eyes. Chapter 3265. Previously, Yiqing Luo had crossed hands with Hao Nanren. But at that time, her little companions didn't show any special reaction. This time, when Hao Nanren released his profound energy, Qi Qi and Qi Yen sensed a strange aura. It could be seen that after she chased Hao Nanren out of the palace in South Waves continent. What change had happened to Hao Nanren? And this change should be due to external forces. Yiqing Luo initially felt that Hao Nanren might cooperate with the secluded palace in a fit of anger. At the same time, he would obtain the power to raise his profound grade. But after observing Hao Nanren for a long time, Yiqing Luo didn't sense any trace of secluded palace's yin qi from Hao Nanren. Furthermore, if Hao Nanren really cooperated with the secluded palace, then it was impossible for him to find trouble with her in front of the various powerhouses, cultivators and the commoners. Even to the extent that he publicly expressed the discord between Jade Dome's sect and East Wave's royal family. So, Yiqing Luo concluded. She totally couldn't sense the strange aura from Hao Nanren, but it made Qi Qi and Qi Yen extremely excited. It must be related to Hao Nanren or Jade Dome's sect itself. Because of this, Yiqing Luo asked. From East Wave's monarch's expression, Yiqing Luo was completely sure of her guess. Regarding Jade Dome's sect, is it inconvenient for East Wave's monarch to say it clearly? Yiqing Luo asked with a light smile. Her tone was gentle and her emotions were calm. But how would East Wave's monarch not hear the deeper meaning in Yiqing Luo's words? Earlier, because of Yiqing Luo's words, he revealed an astonished expression, and it definitely didn't escape Yiqing Luo's eyes. Even if he didn't admit it. Yiqing Luo could also conclude that Jade Dome's sect, indeed, had other powers. Moreover, it wasn't unknown. East Wave's monarch pondered for a moment in his mind and quickly chose Yiqing Luo's side. He lowered his voice and explained to Yiqing Luo, "It's not inconvenient to say it clearly. Actually, in East Wave's continent, it's not considered a big secret. But I feel that it has nothing to do with this. Tell me about it." Yiqing Luo raised her brows curiously. East Wave's monarch said, "In East Wave's continent, Jade Dome's sect's rear mountain, there's a forbidden grounds. That forbidden grounds has a mysterious and powerful force." Forbidden area? Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart, another forbidden plot. Why did every sect seem to like playing the game of forbidden lands? East Wave monarch naturally didn't know about Yiqing Luo's ridicule from the official as he continued, "That forbidden zone, a long time ago, actually didn't belong to Jade Dome's sect. But before that, countless profounders had wanted to enter the forbidden area and obtain the energy within it. But none of them survived." The East Wave's sovereign's expression turned solemn as he finished his last sentence. He clenched his fists. Because of that forbidden area, the East Water continent had lost many profound practitioners. On the surface, the number of profound practitioners they had lost had already caused him incomparable heartache. Not to mention the profound practitioners who had secretly snuck into the forbidden area. So, in the face of heavy losses, the East Billow Imperial family and the Jade Dome sect came to an agreement. The Jade Dome sect will guard that forbidden area and prevent cultivators from taking risks. Yiqing Luo had only listened to the first half of the story and had already imagined the rest of the plot. The East Wave monarch was taken aback. How did Madam Emperor know? Yiqing Luo, it was just a random guess. Under Hao Nanren's anxiousness, he only wanted to break up the relationship between Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. For Yiqing Luo to be so arrogant, wasn't her biggest trump card, the Overlord? If Di Zun was gone, she was just a little girl. How could she be so arrogant? Thinking of this, when Hao Nanren was making fun of Yiqing Luo, it was so smooth that he didn't even have to pant. But Hao Nanren didn't see it. When he opened his mouth for the first sentence, that masked man revealed a pair of peach blossom eyes under the mask. The gaze which he shot at him was like a sharp ice knife, turning colder and colder. Even when he was about to continue to sow dissension between the two of them, the man's sleeves moved. Chapter 3267. Ah! Hao Nanren intended to sow discord, but it turned into a miserable shriek. He didn't have any precaution against Dmo Xian. Of course, even if he had precaution. If Dmo Xian made a move, it would be hard for him to escape. Hence, Hao Nanren forcefully withstood Dmo Xian's palm strike through the air. Inside his body, his 5 viscera and 6 bowels churned and twisted together. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell heavily onto the ground with a pale face as he howled in pain. The surrounding crowd revealed an aghast expression. In their subconscious, they still wanted to respect the sect and wanted to go up to support their sovereign. But facing the purple-robed man's cold intent. To hell with this idea of being the most respected. All of them watched how Nanren sprawled on the ground vomiting blood, as though he was a piece of meat rolling in a hot pot. Towards this scene, Yiqing Luo didn't even give Hao Nanren a glance. She skipped to Dmo Xian's side and hooked his arm. Her actions were as delicate as a young lady who was untainted by the world. There was no trace of the majestic and domineering aura he had shown when he faced Hao Nanren just now. The surrounding crowd was stunned. Yiqing Luo rested her chin on the man's arm as she raised her head and smiled at the man's handsome side profile. "Ah Xian, you heard what East Wave Monarch said, right?" Dmo Xian's gaze was filled with warmth as his thin lips curled. East Wave Monarch and Yiqing Luo's conversation was extremely soft. Even a cultivator might not be able to hear clearly what they were discussing. But Dmo Xian was different. Although eavesdropping this kind of behavior was very degrading. But, there was something related to her. How could Dmo Xian not care about it? His vision had always been on Yiqing Luo, not blinking at all. Towards Dmo Xian's warmth, it was as though it was filled with thousands of spring water. Yiqing Luo's heart was also filled with warmth. The smile between her brows seemed to be longer and narrower. She blinked her long eyelashes, when Hao Nanren released his profound energy. Qi and Qi Yen said that there was an unusual aura on Hao Nanren. Just now, after Hao Nanren spat out blood, Qi and Qian's feelings became stronger. After saying that, she tilted her head and said, "When we were at the Northern Continent's Qinhua clan, Qi and Qi Yen also had the same reaction." She paused, dragging out the last syllable, and narrowed her eyes. Her smile was bright and beautiful, as if all the light in the world had gathered on her. In between Dmo Xian's brows, the lines softened and his deep magnetic voice lightly spat out 2 words, "So?" These 2 words seemed to be able to melt 1,000 years of frost. Of course, this gentleness was only limited to Yiqing Luo alone. No one could escape from Dmo Xian's male hormones. Yiqing Luo was the same. When the man's voice rang out, Yiqing Luo was already grinning as she clung onto Dmo Xian's arm, shifting into his arms. "So, I have a guess." That forbidden area, she didn't finish her sentence. A mysterious smile hung on her lips as she blinked her eyes. Her posture was delicate and adorable. The man's pupils reflected the young lady's devastatingly beautiful face and that bright smile. The smile on his lips grew bigger bit by bit. Facing the young lady's hopeful gaze, he slowly nodded his head. Just as he nodded his head, the young lady's eyes were like the bright stars in the night sky, sparkling with dazzling rays. Chapter 3268. Since she had confirmed the guess in her heart, Yiqing Luo didn't waste any more time. She looked towards the East Wave's monarch. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with a deep meaning of a smile. The East Wave's monarch felt a chill down his spine when he was stared at by this gaze as his body unconsciously straightened up. What did this gaze mean? Was she hinting at something? Was she running away from him for something? Thoughts kept flying past in the East Wave's monarch's mind. Suddenly, a calm and icy cold voice broke all the thoughts in his mind. Forbidden grounds. These 2 simple words exploded in the East Wave's sovereign's mind like a clap of thunder. The expression on the East Wave's monarch's face was both terrified and solemn as he looked towards Dmo Xian's direction. Earlier, that voice came from the Overlord. Forbidden grounds? What did this mean? The East Wave's monarch was shocked as his mind went into a daze. His gaze moved swiftly, trying to catch the meaning of the Overlord's words. Suddenly, his gaze collided with Yi Qing Luo's gaze, which seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. He quivered instantly. He caught onto something as he recalled the discussion about the forbidden grounds with Yi Qing Luo earlier. Could it be? The Overlord and Imperial Madam were planning to. You all are indeed angry from embarrassment. Hao Nanren clutched his chest as he screamed, pointing at the few of them with hatred. Although Dmo Xian's palm didn't take his life, but it also caused his internal organs to be twisted together. As long as he circulated his profound jade heart and wanted to release his profound energy, that twisting pain would corrode his limbs and bones. It was so painful that he couldn't bear it as he groaned. The twisting pain in his body was torturing him. His hatred towards Yi Qing Luo and the hatred towards the East Billow's monarch grew even more intense. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't hate the Overlord. But the Overlord was so powerful that he didn't even dare to have any thoughts of hatred. Cough cough. Suddenly, the East Wave's monarch cleared his throat, interrupting the raging anger in Hao Nanren's heart, and interrupting the crowd's pointing discussions. Everyone's attention was focused on the East Wave's sovereign. The East Wave's sovereign flicked his dragon robe slowly. He looked dignified as he stared at Hao Nanren calmly. The Jade Dome sect master is slandering me because he doubts the Emperor Madam's strength. Hao Nanren frowned, his face full of vigilance. The East Tide sovereign ignored Hao Nanren's response. He looked at the crowd and continued, as for all of you, the reason why you have such a huge reaction is because you cannot believe in the power of the Empress. You cannot believe that she and her companions can save the East Tide continent. He paused and raised his voice to ask, is what I said correct? The onlookers exchanged glances with the people around them before looking at the East Wave's sovereign in unison. They nodded their heads in unison and said, yes, yes. The corner of the East Wave's sovereign's lips curled up. If Imperial Madam can prove her strength, will everyone believe in my choice and believe in Imperial Madam's strength? The onlookers were about to nod in agreement. Hao Nanren immediately interrupted, no. Chapter 3269. Hao Nanren was rendered speechless by East Wave Monarch's words. In his heart, he was certain that the reason why that lady called Yi Qing Luo had so many legendary stories was because she had the help of the Overlord and the Imperial Palace behind her. However, after hearing the East Wave's sovereign's solemn vow, the East Wave's sovereign's heart skipped a beat. No matter how much he felt that Yi Qing Luo was a demoness who relied on her looks, he didn't dare to take this risk. East Wave Monarch, you've already been bewitched by that demoness. What you said about proving your ability is totally untrustworthy. Hao Nanren's nerves were taut as he screamed. The crowd nodded in agreement as they looked towards East Wave Monarch in unison. Jade Dome sect master is right. Unexpectedly, East Wave Monarch nodded in agreement as he gave a gentlemanly smile, so I have a suggestion. Not only can it prove Imperial Madam's ability, it can also wash away the slander of me being bewitched. It can also make Jade Dome sect master, rest assured. As East Wave Monarch spoke, his tone became heavier and heavier. Hao Nanren's heart became even more tensed. And occasionally, it thumped heavily. That kind of uneasy premonition almost made his heart heavy, and he couldn't breathe. What? Under East Wave Monarch's imposing gaze, Hao Nanren's voice trembled as he spat out two words. The moment he said that, he suddenly regained his senses as he hurriedly retracted his words, no. This sect leader will not believe your words. Jade Dome sect master is really awe-inspiring. East Wave Monarch scoffed coldly as his eyes were filled with ridicule as he looked at Hao Nanren. So this East Wave continent belongs to Jade Dome sect master? You're allowed to spout nonsense and slander me, but I'm not allowed to use my own methods to wash away the slander? After he said this, he took a look at the crowd's expression. After seeing the expected expression on the crowd's faces, he sneered as he continued, I haven't even said the specific contents of my suggestion and Jade Dome sect master rejected it impatiently. Or rather, Jade Dome sect master is feeling guilty because she slandered me. The East Wave's sovereign deliberately stared into Hao Nanren's eyes and enunciated each and every word clearly. Hao Nanren's face changed from livid, red, and pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. Hao Nanren's attitude indeed made everyone suspicious. And in comparison, the East Wave monarch who had always been slandered, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian who were calm and indifferent. This made Hao Nanren even more hysterical, guilty, and flustered. The hearts of the onlookers also began to waver. They respected and trusted the sect master of the Jade Dome sect. They also respected and trusted the East Wave's sovereign. No one was willing to offend either side, taking into account the attitudes of both sides. In the end, the crowd chose to wait for the East Wave's sovereign's suggestion. They wanted to see if it was reasonable or not. If it was reasonable, there was nothing better than proving the girl's strength. If it did not make sense, at the very least, they would be able to see clearly whether the East Wave's sovereign was truly bewitched like the sect master had said. Hearing the crowd's approval of the East Wave's sovereign's suggestion, the East Wave's sovereign's eyes widened. Hao Nanren's face turned pale bit by bit. He didn't know what the East Wave's sovereign and Yiqing Luo were planning. But he was very clear that if they followed their plan. Chapter 3270. But if he really refused, that would mean that he had a guilty conscience. It would also confirm that his Jade Dome sect wanted to be the only sect. Hao Nanren was in a dilemma at this moment. This East Wave's sovereign had obviously dug a pit and was waiting for him to jump. And he had no choice but to jump. Why? Jade Dome sect master is so guilty that you don't even dare to listen to my suggestion? At this time, the East Wave's sovereign specially added insult to injury. Facing the suspicious gazes of the onlookers, the East Wave's sovereign's sneer was full of ridicule. Hao Nanren was forced to the point where the veins on his forehead were popping out. The more agitated he was, the more his chest was hit by Dmo Xian's palm, the more his internal organs churned, the more pain he felt. He was in so much pain that his face turned green. Lord Sovereign, just say what suggestion you have. The reason why I and Lord Sovereign attacked this little girl was because we wanted to test her strength, in case you, Lord Sovereign, were deceived. Since you have a fair way to prove the little girl's strength, we are absolutely willing to accept it. When Chao Qian saw this, he immediately rushed up and used a loud voice that was unique to soldiers to continue the conversation. Why not accept such a suggestion? Anyway, that little girl's strength couldn't possibly be so heaven-defying. Just now she could take his axe bare-handed. But that didn't mean that the little girl could really prove her strength. Chao Qian's words made Hao Nanren's expression turn even uglier. He glared at Chao Qian and was about to reprimand him. However, Chao Qian didn't understand Hao Nanren's hatred at all and even put his arm on Hao Nanren's like a good brother. Lord Sovereign, didn't you and Yuan say that that little girl is a swindler? Since Lord Sovereign wants to give her a chance to struggle, on account of Lord Sovereign, we should also give it. Moreover, among the people present, which one of them wasn't a famous profound practitioner of the East Below continent? There are so many citizens here. If Lord Sovereign's suggestion is really unfair, no one will agree. So, Lord Sovereign, let's listen to what Lord Sovereign has to say first. Chao Qian's earnest persuasion was self-righteous words for Hao Nanren's good. It even forced Hao Nanren to have no way out. This was really, piggish teammates can ruin your life. Hao Nanren said through gritted teeth, fine. East Wave's sovereign, speak. The East Wave's sovereign's eyes flashed as he revealed a smile. Very good, the fish took the bait. Rest assured, my suggestion is absolutely fair. The East Wave monarch smiled meaningfully. Since all of you are doubting Lady D's strength, then let Lady D enter the forbidden ground that has been guarded by the Jade Dome sect for generations. As soon as the East Wave's sovereign finished speaking, almost everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. What? Forbidden area? No one can walk out of that forbidden area alive. I still remember that 50 years ago, the Lord of the Ten Scenery sect cultivated for hundreds of years and broke through to the sky profound realm, but he still couldn't get out of that forbidden area. That's a heavenly profound supreme martial artist. Even a Sky Xian Supreme can't get out of the forbidden area, and Lord Monarch is letting that little girl in? Isn't he courting death? The various profound practitioners discussed spiritedly among themselves. Even Hao Nanren was stunned by the East Wave's sovereign's words. Chapter 3271. Why? Jade Dome sect master feels that it's inappropriate. East Wave Monarch narrowed his eyes as he sneered. As long as Madam Emperor can come out of the forbidden grounds alive, wouldn't that prove her ability? Don't think that East Wave Monarch looked calm now. His heart was actually very apprehensive. He didn't know if his guess was right or not. The clues that he had gotten. Only Madam Emperor had a profound gaze. The Overlord had mentioned the word forbidden grounds without any rhyme or reason. The rest depended on his imagination. But after he raised this suggestion, East Wave Monarch didn't feel the needle-like gazes which he had imagined would be shot over. He quietly looked towards the Overlord and Madam Emperor. The expressions of the two people didn't change at all. Did it mean that? He guessed it right? Madam Emperor really wanted to enter the forbidden grounds? One must know. The forbidden grounds was a place which the entire East Wave continent yearned for but feared as a nightmare. Could Madam Emperor really come out of the forbidden grounds safely? Various emotions and thoughts were surging in East Wave Monarch's heart. On the surface, he still maintained that calm expression. My suggestion, isn't it fair? That forbidden grounds is guarded by your Jade Dome sect and even the royal family can't go near it. Isn't this fair enough? This wasn't a question of fairness or unfairness. Hao Nanren wasn't sure what East Wave Monarch was planning. Could this be Yi Qing Luo's scheme? Hao Nanren's puzzled gaze kept shifting between Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian and occasionally looked towards East Wave Monarch. But he couldn't tell that there was any exchange of glances between them. To tell the truth, choosing the forbidden grounds was indeed the fairest place. In the entire East Wave continent, no matter where, no matter what method was used, there was a possibility that East Wave Monarch would help Yi Qing Luo to cheat. But it was impossible to only do it in the forbidden grounds. That forbidden area was guarded by his men of sacrifice. The royal family indeed couldn't interfere. Moreover, even he himself didn't dare to venture deep into that forbidden grounds. This suggestion is good. Without waiting for Hao Nanren to hesitate and think deeply about the motive, Chao Qian's loud voice exploded beside his ear. Chao Qian patted Hao Nanren's back. What Monarch said is right. The forbidden ground guarded by the Jade Dome sect couldn't be used to test the little girl's strength. It's fair, there's nothing wrong with it. Hao Nanren was already suffering from internal injuries. The palm struck down. Hao Nanren felt that his internal organs that had been tangled together were all broken. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He stumbled backwards. If not for Chao Qian's timely support, Hao Nanren would have become a pile of fat meat on the ground. Hao Nanren's face turned green and pale. He wished he could slap Chao Qian, this stupid teammate, to death. If only he had known that Chao Qian was so stupid that he was hated by others. He definitely wouldn't have found such a stupid teammate in the first place. Just as Hao Nanren was left speechless by Chao Qian's words, the East Wave sovereign spoke up. The girl who had been standing silently by the man's side moved her pink lips and said in a clear voice, "That's good. Since the protector of the state has said so, I will accept this challenge." The East Wave's sovereign looked at the crowd and said, "Since the Lady Emperor has agreed to it, what do you think of my suggestion?" The crowd looked at each other in dismay. That forbidden grounds was a legendary existence in the East Wave continent. No one had any objections. Chapter 3272. Hearing the crowd's cheerful voices of agreement. Looking at Chao Qian, He patted his back as he raised his voice to express his opinion. Then we've decided to use this method to test the young girl's ability. As long as the young girl can come out alive, we'll believe her. Now that things had come to this, there was no room for Hao Nanren to reject. Of course, he could reject. But once he rejected, then it would be proven that he was guilty and he was intentionally targeting Yi Qing Luo, intentionally slandering the East Wave's monarch. Hao Nanren took a deep breath to ease the pain in his body and also to calm the restlessness in his heart. He shut his eyes tightly. No matter, agree then agree. Even a profound Sky Supreme Being powerhouse had died in that forbidden area. How could Yi Qing Luo be able to compete against a Sky Mystic Overlord expert? If she wanted to come out alive, to prove her ability, that would depend on whether she had the fate to do so, whether she had the chance. With this thought in mind, Hao Nanren's lips curled into a sinister sneer as he abruptly opened his eyes. His poisonous eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo with a sinister smile. I can agree to the East Wave's monarch's suggestion, but I have another condition. East Wave's monarch's brows creased as he was about to open his mouth. But he heard Yi Qing Luo chuckling as she spat out a word, speak. I'm doubting you, using your looks to please others, so, you can only enter the forbidden grounds alone. Hao Nanren's eyes were burning with a sinister flame as he pointed his finger. He and your companions are not allowed to enter the forbidden grounds. First, the first person he wanted to stop was the Overlord. As long as the Overlord didn't lend a helping hand, Yi Qing Luo would definitely die in the forbidden grounds. As expected. When he raised this request, Yi Qing Luo's clear and peerlessly beautiful face turned pale. Even the smile on the corners of her lips had stiffened. Whereas East Wave's monarch was already anxious as his forehead was filled with sweat. How can this be? No matter if it's the Emperor's madam, young Master D or their companions, they are all my benefactors. If we want to test, naturally everyone should test together. East Wave's monarch's panic was extremely realistic. Because, he was really panicking. He had been able to remain calm previously because, he believed in His Majesty's strength. They also thought that the Overlord and Madame D had planned to enter the Forbidden Land to silence the crowd because the Overlord was confident that he could come back alive from the Forbidden Land. But now, D Zun was not allowed to enter the Forbidden Land with them? Only the Imperial Madam? No matter how powerful the Imperial Madam was. After entering that forbidden area, it would be extremely dangerous. After all, even a Sky Mystic Supreme had perished in the forbidden area. The East Wave's sovereign's panic further confirmed Hao Nanren's suspicions. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's expression, Hao Nanren was proud of his wit. Lady D didn't look too happy. Wasn't Lady D very confident? Could it be that Madame D can't do anything without that man? You! The East Wave's sovereign roared furiously. Sect Master of the Jade Dome sect, how can you let the Emperor Madam enter the forbidden grounds alone? Chapter 3273. Not only this sect master, the country's imperial general, or everyone present, who doesn't think that Imperial Madam uses her looks to seduce powerful men, a little demoness who escorts her. Hao Nanren's tone became more and more vulgar. Following that, he laughed loudly as he looked at the crowd. Don't you think so? His laughter made his insides hurt even more. But just thinking of the scene of Yi Qing Luo entering the forbidden grounds and dying inside, he couldn't help but continue laughing. The crowd didn't want to offend the royal family, so they didn't go along with Hao Nanren's words. But their gazes towards Yi Qing Luo were extremely obvious. So to prove your ability, to make everyone believe in you, naturally you have to rely on your own strength. Hao Nanren sneered as his lips twitched. Why? Imperial Madam doesn't dare to? After he finished his words, he started laughing crazily again. But, this gaze and Hao Nanren's laughter didn't last for long. But moments later, the entire street fell into a dead silence. Not knowing from where, an indescribable majestic overbearing aura enveloped them. It was like 1,000 catty huge rock, pressing heavily on everyone. That aura was getting fiercer and fiercer. they couldn't even catch their breaths. Not to mention staring at Yi Qing Luo, their minds were filled with lewd thoughts. Not to mention that he was laughing maniacally. Only East Wave's monarch knew clearly that aura was released by the Overlord. He believed. If it wasn't for Imperial Madam coaxing him by the side. He was afraid that the Overlord wanted to exterminate everyone present. He didn't miss the flash of murderous intent in the Overlord's cold gaze. That murderous intent was very faint. But it was enough to make East Wave's monarch feel the arrival of death. East Wave's monarch rubbed his hands, thinking of ways to cooperate with Imperial Madam to send the Overlord into the Forbidden Grounds. But he saw Imperial Madam holding the Overlord's hand, standing slightly forward as she looked at Hao Nanren, smiling faintly. "All right, I can agree to this request." Imperial Madam. East Wave's monarch opened his mouth anxiously, his face filled with worry and panic. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand as she stopped East Lan Sovereign's persuasion words. Her alluring eyes were calm as she stared at Hao Nanren. "What Jade Dome sect master said is right. Indeed, only if I enter the Forbidden Zone alone will everyone be convinced." But East Wave Sovereign's face was twisted as he looked at Dmo Xian. Seeing this, Hao Nanren immediately said, "The Emperor Lady is indeed a heroine. She is skilled and bold." Since that was the case, then it was settled. "I think this young Master D will also agree." If the Overlord disregarded the rules and the agreement and forced his way into the forbidden area, he was indeed unable to stop them. But if the Overlord really did it, Yi Qing Luo's reputation in the Eastern continent would be completely ruined. He also had a chance to take advantage of this opportunity to force the East Wave Imperial family to step down. His plan to dominate the East continent could also be brought forward. Everyone's vision congealed onto Dmo Xian, waiting for his reply. After a long while, Dmo Xian's eyes were fixed on the hand which he and Yi Qing Luo were holding, as he slowly raised his head. His thin lips moved slightly, his deep voice was as cold as ice, but it was so dignified that it made one's heart tremble. "If Lil Luo agrees, then this lord agrees." East Wave's monarch's face turned paler. But the Overlord had already agreed. What other rights did he have to reject? It was because of Dmo Xian's agreement that made Hao Nanren laugh out so much that everyone forgot about the man's words earlier. That self-proclaimed, "this lord." Chapter 3274. Seeing that Dmo Xian had agreed to it, Hao Nanren was afraid that Dmo Xian would go back on his words as he hurriedly led a bunch of people towards the direction of the Forbidden Grounds. Along the way, Hao Nanren instructed seriously in front of the various powerhouses, "Since the Overlord has already agreed to my request, I hope the Overlord will abide by the agreement." Dmo Xian of course couldn't even be bothered to lift his eyelids. Hao Nanren didn't mind at all. Anyway, his instructions were all for the various powerhouses to hear. Following that, he continued on his own. "After Imperial Madam enters the Forbidden Grounds, if the Overlord is worried about her and forcefully barges into the Forbidden Grounds, that would mean that Imperial Madam's challenge has failed, and it would also prove that what I said earlier is not a lie." The last sentence, Hao Nanren enunciated it word by word very slowly. A pair of slits eyes stared at Dmo Xian vigilantly. As long as the Overlord didn't interfere. Just based on Yi Qing Luo's strength. In the Forbidden Grounds, she probably wouldn't even be able to hold on for a joss stick's time. Moreover, as the guardian of that Forbidden Grounds, he couldn't be clearer about it. There was a possibility that even if the Overlord entered it personally, he wouldn't be able to walk out alive. Of course, this possibility was something that Hao Nanren didn't dare to try easily. After all, it was rumored that the Overlord came from the upper realm and no one in the world knew the Overlord's real ability. Hao Nanren felt that it was better not to bet on a bet that he couldn't afford. "Let's kill Yi Qing Luo first." Only. Hao Nanren's saliva had dried up after saying such a long paragraph of words. But he didn't get any response from them. That golden couple who were walking in front of him intimately didn't even give him a glance. This neglect made the fat on Hao Nanren's face feel like it was burning. Indistinctly, he could hear at least 100 over voices from various powerhouses behind them. Those two people don't seem to have any regard for Sovereign at all. Compared to Sovereign's attitude, I feel that those two people look a little otherworldly experts imposing manner. You think so too? Somehow I feel that Sovereign is intentionally targeting that young lady. The whispered discussions made Hao Nanren's expression turn uglier and uglier. He was extremely infuriated, and with a gloomy face, he hastened his footsteps and walked towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. His meaty arms stretched out and stood in front of the two of them. Hao Nanren was about to speak. However, he was interrupted by the girl's clear and melodious voice. Since I said that I'm going in alone, then I'm going in alone. You're so long-winded. Could it be that you're really feeling guilty? The girl's voice was clearly impatient. Clearly, he had lost his patience with Hao Nanren's pestering. Hao Nanren swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. His face was flushed, and his eyes were sinister. Soon, the group arrived at the entrance of the forbidden area. The location of the forbidden ground was the back mountain of the Jade Dome sect that had been barren for hundreds of years. Due to the power that attracted countless cultivators to their deaths, the Jade Dome sect and the East Billow imperial family negotiated, and the Jade Dome sect set up a formation in the back mountain and arranged for the Jade Dome sect's death warriors to guard it. Even if Hao Nanren came personally, he had to take out a token to prove his identity before he could summon the death warriors to open the entrance of the formation. According to the rules, Jade Dome sect only had the right to guard the forbidden ground. Chapter 3275. However, Hao Nanren and the East Wave's sovereign had appeared at the same time this time. Moreover, he made the bet clear. Only then did the guard reluctantly agree to open the entrance to the formation. But he strongly requested to sign the life and death contract with Yiqing Luo. This was also Hao Nanren's request. In case any accident happened to Yiqing Luo in the forbidden grounds, causing the overlord to vent his anger on Jade Dome sect. Under everyone's witness, Yiqing Luo signed the life and death contract. Hao Nanren finally heaved a sigh of relief. The entrance of the formation had just opened up a gap. The crowd present were able to clearly sense a powerful, opium-like, soul-enticing power pouring out in torrents. Yiqing Luo stood right in front. That force was directed at her face. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly. Hao Nanren, who was by the side, had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's expression. Seeing her frown, he smiled coldly and lifted his lower lip. He had personally experienced the power of the Forbidden Land. Yiqing Luo was definitely going to die today. At the entrance of the formation, there was a gap that could fit one person. Hao Nanren suddenly thought of something, and just as Yiqing Luo was about to enter the forbidden grounds, he suddenly opened his mouth. Wait. If you enter the Forbidden Land alone, no one will know what happens in the Forbidden Land. Therefore, in order to prove that you didn't hide at the edge of the formation and wait for a few hours before walking out again, this sect leader suggests that not only do you have to come out alive, you also have to pluck the magnetic gold spirit grass in the middle of the forbidden area. Metal magnet spirit herb? The surrounding people gasped in shock. This metal magnet spirit grass was already a legendary herb in the East Billow continent. It was said that it was the only thing that the sect master of the 10 Scenery sect had left behind at the edge of the forbidden area 50 years ago. Later on, a medicine ancestor ranked medicine master identified it as a rare metal magnet spirit herb. This metal magnetism spirit grass was so precious. That was because its effect was to refine a pill that could reconstruct one's fleshly body. Moreover, the reconstructed body was the cleanest, without any impurities. This kind of physical body, when cultivated, was equivalent to twice that of an ordinary person. The herbal sect's pharmacist concluded that there was a high possibility that this was a herb that grew in the forbidden area. After the herb was taken away by the Jade Dome sect 50 years ago, there had been no news of the magnetic metal spirit herb ever since. Hao Nanren made this request. It wasn't too much, right? But, rumors were just rumors. Who knew if there really was a metal magnet spirit grass in the forbidden area? If he said it was too much, then he felt that his first sentence was quite right. If she didn't bring along some evidence, how would they believe that Yi Qing Luo was in the forbidden grounds, hiding at the edge of the array to waste time, or was she really able to walk one round in the forbidden grounds and preserve her life? Therefore, no one refuted him. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. She knew that Hao Nanren still had a trick up his sleeve waiting for her. She turned her gaze towards Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian's eyes were tranquil, like a pair of peach blossom blooming eyes, collided with hers. Yi Qing Luo's heart swiftly settled down. She smirked and said confidently, "Sure." Dmo Xian's expression did not change at all. This also meant that there was indeed a metal magnet spirit herb in this forbidden area. Don't ask Dmo Xian how he knew. Anyway, she believed in her Xian. When the crowd saw Yi Qing Luo agreeing so readily, all of their expressions were complicated, as they couldn't help but think. Chapter 3276. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's agreement. Hao Nanren's face was filled with complacency and sinister, totally unable to conceal. He continued excitedly, And one more thing, shouldn't you set a time? We can't just wait here for you for a year, don't you agree? Yi Qing Luo nodded in agreement. So? Hao Nanren laughed sinisterly. So, you must give us a time. If we exceed that time and you haven't come out alive from the forbidden grounds, then that means you have already died in the forbidden grounds, which also means that you, Yi Qing Luo, don't have the ability to save the East Continent. Under the excitement, Hao Nanren directly shouted out Yi Qing Luo's name. When the crowd heard that, they started to nod. They couldn't possibly keep guarding the entrance of the forbidden grounds, waiting for the answer. They might as well give an accurate time directly. And Hao Nanren's excited action made quite a number of powerhouses cultivators frown slightly. Yi Qing Luo? Earlier, sovereigns seemed to have shouted this name. Why did they somehow feel that this name sounded so familiar? Just as they were about to ponder deeply, Chao Qian's loud voice interrupted all the cultivators' deep thoughts. Young lass, hurry and tell us a time. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled. In her heart, she followed her own guess, calculating the approximate time. She stretched out her hand, as she raised 2 fingers towards Hao Nanren. 2 years? Hao Nanren couldn't help but laughed. Imperial Madam, are you joking? 2 years? You want us to wait for you for 2 years? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose, as she shook her fingers. Chao Qian frowned, as he asked uncertainly, 2 months? Yi Qing Luo smiled but didn't say a word. Don't tell me it's 20 days? Hao Nanren lost his patience from Yi Qing Luo's keeping him in suspense. 20 days it is, then it's settled. No. Yi Qing Luo's voice was languid and cold, as her fingers shook once again. 20 days. 20 days, your East Continent would have long become secluded palace's territory. She rolled her eyes. 2 days. 2 days. Everyone was shocked. This lady, could it be that she had treated this East Continent's nightmare forbidden grounds as an ordinary array? 2 days to reach the middle layer of the forbidden grounds, and even pluck the gold magnetic spirit grass. How was that possible? Let's not talk about whether we can reach the middle of the forbidden area within 2 days. Even if they arrived, would such a precious medicinal herb like the metal magnetism spirit grass be so easy to find? Even if he found it, would it be so easy to pluck it? This young lady was too confident. Madam, isn't this a little too short? The East Wave monarch asked worriedly. Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Hao Nanren's loud shout. Good. 2 days. Madam D is a straightforward person. 2 days then. Sect Master of the Jade Dome Sect. The East Wave sovereign shouted angrily as he glared at Hao Nanren. No one knew the dangers within the forbidden grounds. 2 days was really too short. It was obvious that Hao Nanren was trying to force Madam D to her death. If something happened to the Imperial Madam, the people of Dark Nether Palace took this opportunity to invade the East Continent. Then, who else could save the people of the East Below Continent? East Wave's sovereign's face turned pale, as the expression on his face turned dignified, as his eyes were filled with anger. East Wave's sovereign, that's the time which Madame D personally said, it has nothing to do with me. Hao Nanren hurriedly threw out this sentence, as his vision looked towards Dmo Xian. This sentence of his was also an explanation to Dmo Xian. Chapter 3277. The aura that the East Wave's sovereign was exuding dissipated in an instant. That's right, this was the time that Imperial Madam personally said. He looked at Yi Qing Luo worriedly, wanting to persuade her, but when he saw the young lady's resolute eyes, the fluster in his heart calmed down. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a light smile. Her beautiful pink lips were like a gorgeous rose, slowly blooming, 2 days. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't confirm the guess in his heart, perhaps she wouldn't even need 4 hours. Yi Qing Luo walked towards the entrance of the array and turned sideways, smiling at Dmo Xian. The young lady's charming eyes glowed, gathering thousands of tender feelings. Every eyebrow was filled with that tender feeling. The young girl raised 2 fingers and placed them on her lips, gently pressing a kiss on them. Following that, she pointed the direction of her fingers towards Dmo Xian. The young lady's cherry blossom pink lips curled into an enchanting smile. Word by word, wait for me to come back. After the young lady finished her words, she smiled sweetly and stepped into the array to look for that. Obviously, the crowd didn't understand what the young lady's kiss meant. But they could clearly feel it. The young lady and that masked man had deep feelings for each other. How could a lady with such deep feelings in her eyes be able to tolerate anyone else in her heart? The crowd simply couldn't believe it. This young lady was what the sect master had mentioned, a lady who used her looks to serve others. The crowd looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. Her red robe fluttered, her long black hair was like a butterfly's wings, her entire body was enchanting, like the most brilliant peach blossom. That scene was imprinted in everyone's eyes. And also, imprinted in their hearts. Until the array entrance was completely shut. That red-robed figure completely disappeared before their eyes. They then regained their senses. Hao Nanren saw everyone's reaction. He clenched his fists tightly, his eyes filled with malice. It didn't matter, this group of people could think whatever they liked. Yi Qing Luo went in. She went in. She would definitely die in the Forbidden Grounds. In this world, there was no one who would go against him. But Hao Nanren, who was immersed in joy, didn't notice. The purple-clothed man stood there like a god. Beneath the mask, his peach blossom eyes shone like a poisonous thorny flower. It was bitterly cold, almost as though it were devouring one's soul. Inside the forbidden area. Yi Qing Luo was just outside the forbidden grounds when she felt the special energy here. After entering the forbidden area, the boundless energy that seemed capable of devouring everything grew even denser. Towards the forbidden grounds, Yi Qing Luo indeed didn't know much about it. However, he also knew that the mysterious power of this forbidden land should be released by something. This power was so strong. It was no wonder that it attracted so many profound practitioners. They clearly knew that this forbidden area was a dead end, but they still came wave after wave to throw away their lives. After all, everyone wanted to be an accident. What if he obtained this power? In this world where the strong were respected, that would be a man above men. Yi Qing Luo surveyed the surroundings. From outside the formation, she had thought that this forbidden area was a barren mountain where not even a blade of grass grew. But after stepping into the forbidden area, she discovered that this was a huge forest. Dense trees and weeds were almost as tall as a person. The surroundings were filled with all kinds of strange vines. It looked like a kind of déjà vu, man-eating plants. Yi Qing Luo was observing the surrounding environment. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.